And welcome to this week's episode of Who Is That Guy? And this is about major lore characters that are having an impact on Legion, but also have a backstory, sometimes even predating World of Warcraft itself. And we're on to Maiev Shadowsong. During the time of the War of the Ancients, which is the first major attack by the Legion on Azeroth, Maiev was a priestess of the moon along with Tyrande Whisperwind. After serving with distinction, Maiev sort of felt that she should have been elevated to High Priestess, but that honour was given to Tyrande, with Maiev being second in command, something that did not endear her to Tyrande. In fact, there was a period of time when Maiev was the High Priestess when Tyrande disappeared, but she came back and Maiev had to give up that title once again. During the War of the Ancients is when Maiev, along with the many Night Elves, took an instant dislike to arcane magic, which they blamed for the attack by the Legion on Azeroth. While investigating Mount Hyjal, Maiev was part of the party that discovered that Illidan had used the waters he'd saved from the first Well of Eternity before the Sundering to create a second one at the top of Mount Hyjal. This led to the capture of Illidan. Whilst cornering and capturing Illidan, Illidan tried to defend himself with yet another explosion of arcane magic, which only further cemented Maiev's disdain for this form of sorcery. Malfurion, Illidan's brother, decreed that Illidan would have to be locked away for all time in a barrow. Maiev insisted that she be the one to guard him, along with a new sect of Watchers taken from the priestesses. Malfurion agreed, and Maiev spent 10,000 years ensuring that Illidan could not escape or do any more harm. After 10,000 years of imprisonment, Tyrande wanted to release Illidan to help against another attack by the Legion. Malfurion disagreed with this, but Tyrande did it anyway. In order to free him, she had to kill several Watchers. Eventually, Illidan did just as they wanted. He defeated the Legion attack, but in the process consumed the skull of Gul'dan, which gave him more power. Appalled at this, Malfurion decreed that Illidan should be exiled from the Night Elf lands. Not satisfied with this judgment, Maiev took it upon herself to take her Watchers in pursuit of Illidan. Eventually, Maiev noticed that Illidan and his forces were burning ships. She took this to mean that he intended to make his escape across the sea. She encountered the Naga that were helping. At this point, the Night Elves knew nothing about them. Maiev and her Watchers managed to stop the Naga destroying the last of the boats, and they used them to pursue Illidan. Eventually, they came upon some islands which appeared on no map, and the other Watchers didn't know what they were, but Maiev recognized them because she grew up on Suramar. They eventually came across an orc called Drakthul, who you can still see on the Broken Shore today, although he basically tells you to bugger off. This was a former disciple of Gul'dan, and through him they discovered what happened to Gul'dan on the Broken Shore, and surmised that it was Gul'dan likely who had raised up Suramar from the depths, because it originally had been underwater after the Sundering. After learning that Gul'dan was after something called the Eye, which we know to be the Eye of Sargeras, she decided it must be a very powerful artifact, and this also would be what Illidan was after. She pursued Illidan into the tomb. Illidan, upon seeing Maiev and the Watchers, decided that it would be fitting punishment if they were themselves entombed, as he had been for 10,000 years, and he caused the collapse of the area as he teleported out. The Watchers were now completely trapped with no way out. Only Maiev had the magical power to teleport away, but she would have to leave her Watchers behind. Her second-in-command, Naisha, implored her to do this, as they were doomed anyway. So at this point, Maiev now is particularly annoyed at Tyrande, because she's not only usurped what she thought was her rightful position as High Priestess, but also murdered several of her Watcher sisters in releasing Illidan in the first place. It's fairly clear that Illidan is doing a great deal of harm at this point, and now Illidan has caused her to abandon her Watchers as well. Vengeance is now swelling in her heart. This is no longer simply her carrying out her duty. Whilst pursuing Illidan back on Kalimdor, Maiev is none too pleased to find herself having to work with Tyrande as well as Malfurion in this recapture. Whilst on the pursuit, they come across the Blood Elf Prince Kel'Thas, who says that if in return for helping him find his caravan, that he will help track down Illidan. This they eventually do, but under an attack, Tyrande stands upon a bridge to help cut them off, and brings the bridge down around her. This causes her to be swept away. Kel'Thas is all in favour of pursuing and trying to rescue Tyrande, but Maiev holds him to his promise that he is there now that they've done what he wanted them to do, they've got to pursue Illidan, that Tyrande can look after herself. Kel'Thas reluctantly agrees to uphold his end of the deal, and they eventually do track down Illidan. When they eventually meet back up with Malfurion, Maiev tells him that Tyrande has been torn apart and fallen, and that this is all Illidan's fault. If Illidan had not set himself on this course, Tyrande would never have had to have been there to have suffered this fate. Malfurion agrees and, consumed with grief, decides that Illidan has to die this time.
Maiev, we've got to move quickly. Illidan is weaving a spell that is splitting apart the roof of the world. We must... Wait. Where is Tyrande?
I'm sorry, Shondo, but the priestess has fallen. We aided a band of Alliance warriors against the undead. The priestess fought valiantly, but I saw her torn apart with my own eyes.
Eventually, after a number of battles with the Naga under Illidan's command, they corner Illidan. Malfurion says that for his reckless abandon of reason, as well as for the death of Tyrande, that he must be sentenced to death. At this, Illidan is just as grieved to hear of Tyrande's fall. At which Kel'Thas pipes up and says, "We don't actually know that Tyrande is dead. We only saw her washed downstream." Malfurion at this is furious with Maiev for lying to him, and she tries to explain that Illidan is the main target here.
And no heed to the cost! Because of you, Tyrande is dead!
What? Your pardon, Lord Stormrage, but the priestess may still be alive. She was swept downriver, but it's premature to simply assume
Silence, Kale.
You told me she was torn apart. You lied to me.
The betrayer's capture was our primary concern, Shondo. I needed your help. I knew you would go to her, and we would lose our chance.
Just who is the betrayer now, woman?
Illidan pipes up that if Malfurion allows him, his Naga could probably find Tyrande much more quickly than they could together. Consumed by an all-encompassing desire to save Tyrande, Malfurion agrees, and Illidan's Naga indeed do find Tyrande, and they're able to rescue her. In gratitude for this service, Malfurion spares Illidan's life, but tells him to leave and never return to Night Elf society. Illidan creates a portal to flee Azeroth, but Maiev is not happy with this judgment and pursues him, taking her watchers through the portal.
Farewell, brother. Tyrande. I doubt our paths will cross again in Shu Falana.
Fools! Have no sense of justice.
Maiev, Illidan has atoned for his crimes. He is no longer a threat to...
It's no use, Tyrande. She has become vengeance itself, bound forever to the hunt. I only pray that in her zeal she doesn't cause even more havoc than Illidan.
Finding herself on Outland, the shattered remains of Draenor, Maiev does capture Illidan, but is then beset by Lady Vasha's Naga, as well as Kel'Thas's Blood Elves, which comes as a bit of a surprise to her. Kel'Thas at this point has allied himself with Illidan. Maiev is taken to the Warden's Cage, which is where we meet her for the first time in World of Warcraft in the Burning Crusade, where she's kept under guard by Akama and the Ashtung Deathsworn, who are under Illidan's command. And though it's quite clear that neither Maiev nor Akama are friends of Illidan, Maiev constantly makes remarks that she is interested only in vengeance upon Illidan himself, and she has no interest in the schemes of Akama. Eventually, through the storyline in TBC, Maiev is released. We fight Illidan at the top of the Black Temple. Maiev appears in the final phase, and it is she who is supposedly striking the final blow against him. At the end of it, Illidan announces that without him, her life is now meaningless, something that she agrees with. Maiev eventually does return to Darnassus, Night Elf society, at the time of Cataclysm, when the Worgen and the Highborn are welcomed within the fold. Maiev disagrees with this most strongly. At this point, not only is she really annoyed with Tyrande, but she's furious at Malfurion as well, for as she sees it, his arrogance dooming the Night Elf race. She hates the Highborn for their use of arcane magic. She also doesn't like the Worgen, as she sees it as part of the Alliance for constantly bringing the elves into conflict from which they lose so much. Maiev schemes to kill in particular the leaders of the Highborn race, and succeeds in one particular case. Eventually, she's driven away by her own brother, Jared's Shadowsong. And at this point, until Legion, that's what Maiev had remained. An outcast from Night Elf society, someone bent only on vengeance. In Legion itself, those events are largely glossed over, and she returns now as Illidan returns. First of all, as the jailer of the demon hunters whom she releases because of the attack by the Legion. And when Illidan is now brought onto our side, although there are many snide remarks in such as the Cathedral of Eternal Night, she is nonetheless working with him to banish the Legion from Azeroth. And at this point, it might well be that Maiev's story has ended, maybe permanently, maybe not so. Whether we can say through the quest lines in Legion that she has mellowed during her time, does she seek vengeance in the same way as she did before against Illidan, Malfuria and Tyrande? Who knows? Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.